He's not just the boy who meets an alien. He's the kid staring at an empty chair where his father used to sit, lying to his mother so he can protect a secret, breaking school rules to save a few helpless frogs, and racing down the street on a stolen bicycle with the police behind him, just to make sure one friend doesn't leave him too. E.T. the Extraterrestrial isn't only about a visitor from the stars. It's about a wounded child slowly learning how to love, to protect, and to say goodbye without breaking. In this video, we'll explore Elliott's inner journey in 6 parts, from the invisible child at the table to learning to say goodbye without breaking. The invisible child at the table. In the cluttered kitchen full of pizza boxes, dishes, and half-joking, half-serious remarks from adults, he sits there feeling as if he isn't really present. The chair under him is solid, the clinking of cutlery is constant, but the empty seat where his father used to sit feels like a black hole pulling his thoughts into it. Every time his mother casually mentions Mexico, his heart tightens. Not because that place means anything special to him, but because it sounds like a secret code only adults understand. A reminder that his father is somewhere far away, living a life with no space left for him. He reacts with the only weapon a 10-year-old has, arguing back, raising his voice, trying to steal a few seconds of attention in a conversation that has already pushed him aside. This impulsiveness is not new. For a long time, whenever he feels belittled, he snaps, slams doors, throws toys, or blurts out barbed comments that sound too sharp for his age. Adults call it being naughty, too sensitive, but for him, it is the only way to say, "I'm hurting, I'm scared," when he talks about the strange creature in the yard and nobody believes him. The hurt doubles. Half of it comes from not being trusted, the other half from how their mockery echoes the feeling of his father turning his back and walking away. Without explanation, without a final look, he jumps up from the table, storms off to his room or into the yard, repeating the same pattern, retreating before his anger explodes again, before his harsh words make his mother even sadder. And yet, with every departure like that, he feels himself being pushed a little farther from the family, like a satellite drifting slowly out of the orbit where it once belonged. A stranger who mirrors his loneliness. Out in the darkness behind the house with tall weeds brushing his waist, strange sounds in the air, and the faint chill of the night, he shivers. The fragile part of his mind wants to go back in, shut the door, and pretend nothing ever happened. But another, more stubborn part urges him forward, just like when he kept arguing at the dinner table, even knowing no one was truly listening. Fear makes his legs tremble, but it doesn't make them stop. This is a familiar pattern. The more threatened he feels, the more he tries to prove he isn't weak. When the flashlight beam catches the small figure crouching among the corn rows, something in him softens. That strange being, with its wide, frightened eyes, looks just as lost and disoriented as he feels. Instead of seeing a threat, he sees a reflection. Someone cut off from home, without a way back, surrounded by unfamiliar sounds. The decision to drag E.T. into his room, hide him under blankets, and keep him secret like all the unspoken sorrows he never shares with his mother is another repetition of his usual habit, hiding anything that truly matters to him. He lies, distracts, pretends nothing is going on, just as he has pretended to be fine whenever his mother mentions his father. Yet this negative impulse, lying, closing off, distrusting adults, opens a new path. Inside his room, he is finally allowed to tell the truth to someone who doesn't mock or judge. The way he sets down food, steps back so he won't scare E.T., then slowly inches closer again, reveals that behind his thorny exterior is a heart clumsily learning how to be gentle. The loneliness that used to be buried deep now has somewhere to go, not through words, but through small gestures, sliding the plate a bit nearer, drawing crude pictures, pointing to his chest, then to the sky. His messy room full of toys, once just a storage space for silence, begins to turn into a place where he can try out a kind of bond that doesn't threaten him with shouting or sudden goodbyes. Rebellion turning into compassion. The day he fakes being sick to stay home with E.T. Everything plays out like a new version of an old routine. Once again, he lies to the adults, uses tricks, pressing the thermometer to a light bulb, coughing theatrically, pretending to be exhausted to escape a world he feels he doesn't belong to. School, with its rigid rules, dull assignments, and teachers who never see the chaos inside their students. Just as at home, where he feels constantly judged through his outbursts. In the classroom, he is only a name on a list. His way of resisting is still avoidance and deception, the same pattern replaying itself. But when the door closes and it's just him and E.T., that chain of reactions begins to shift. The stolen hours from school aren't used for mischief or showing off. Instead, he spends them teaching his friend new words, watching in wonder as E.T. imitates him, and realizing that somehow their minds are starting to blend in ways no adult vocabulary can describe. When E.T. makes a mess, spilling drinks, pushing buttons, rummaging through the kitchen, he gets annoyed but not explosive, not in the way he snaps at his brother. He is more patient with this alien than with his own family, because here he isn't being scrutinized. The frog rescue scene in the science lab is where his rebellious pattern becomes most visible. Under the emotional influence of E.T., he jumps up, defies the dreary lesson, and opens the jars to free the frogs from their fate on the dissection table. On the surface, it's the same old breaking of rules, the same refusal to obey, the same spontaneous disobedience. But unlike the angry outbursts at home, this act springs from compassion. The energy that once fueled his self-defensive rage is now used to protect tiny lives that no one else cares about. It is a subtle but crucial shift. The same wild streak, now guided by the desire to do what feels morally right, rather than simply protecting his wounded pride. Even the sudden kiss he gives his classmate, under E.T.'s psychic influence, mirrors this transformation. He is still doing something unexpected and outside the norm, something that shocks the room, but inside, it isn't fueled by a need to challenge the world anymore. Instead, there is embarrassment, awkward excitement, and a spark of courage he didn't know he had. For the first time, he lets himself feel a moment completely, instead of shrinking back into his shell. Powerlessness in the face of loss. As E.T.'s health declines, the old fractures inside him ache again. He watches the alien skin pale, hears the breaths grow shallow, and is pulled back to that empty seat at the table, his father's chair that no one can fill. Instead of immediately calling for help, he falls into his default pattern, trying to handle everything on his own, confiding only in his brother, shutting his mother out with closed doors and hollow reassurances that nothing's wrong. Once again, deception and isolation become his instinctive shield against the possibility of loss. But the more he hides, the worse things get. When the masked figures in protective suits invade the house, everything is already beyond his control. He is pushed aside by machines, tubes, harsh lights, and the strange language of experts. He can only watch through plastic and glass. Heart racing, throat tight. This is not a new feeling. It is the same powerlessness he knew when his family fell apart without his input or consent. Back then, adults made choices over his head. Now they circle the one he loves, speaking in codes, making decisions he cannot alter. What makes the pain different this time is the depth of the bond he has built. Their psychic link forces him to experience E.T.'s decline, as if his own body were shutting down, lying on the hospital bed beside E.T., face drained, breath thin. He becomes the living consequence of his own habit of self-isolation. By always trying to handle it himself, he has woven himself so tightly into this secret that no one else can step in to share his burden. When he hears the word dead, it strikes at his last naive belief that if he just tries hard enough, he can stop people from leaving. This time he can't. That failure pushes him to confront the limit of his strategy, relying only on himself, trusting only in secrecy, using lies to delay reality. Third, snor sides. From rule breaker to protector, when he discovers that E.T. is still alive, what rises first in him isn't pure joy, but a fierce sense that he must act now. There is no room left for stalling, no safe place for "let's wait and see," the approach that once left him with nothing but silence. He goes back to familiar tactics, distracting adults, exploiting loopholes, pulling his friends into a reckless plan. But now, in his mind, these aren't games or revenge. They are duties. The bicycle escape plays like a summary of all the contradictions in him. The boy who once snapped at his mother and slammed doors now leads the group, shouting at his friends to pedal faster, eyes scanning desperately for an exit through the maze of police cars. His impulsive nature is still there. He makes split-second turns, dares risky moves, never hesitates. But each decision now carries the weight of understanding. If they slow down, E.T. will be captured. If they stop, everything will be lost. His defiance of authority, teachers, his mother, and now armed forces repeats over and over, but the motive underneath is entirely different from the night he erupted at the dinner table. Back then, he fought adults to protect his wounded ego. Now he fights them to protect a fragile life and honor a promise to send his friend home. Every panting push of the pedals carries him further away from his old role as the problem child. He becomes the only one willing to do what must be done, even if that means accepting punishment later. The moment the bikes rise off the ground, soaring above obstacles with the sky opening in front of them, his rebellious streak is finally transformed into a virtue. The courage to break past limits imposed by adults, not for attention, but to save a friendship no one else can truly understand. Learning to say goodbye. Without breaking on the clearing where the ship is about to land, he stands with his face soaked in tears, but the panic is gone. All the times he has been abandoned, silenced, pushed to the margins flood back at once. Only this time he is allowed a farewell. "Stay with me" slips out of him, not only because he's afraid of being alone again, but because he now grasps the cost of letting life separate him from those he loves without words, without goodbyes. When E.T. touches his forehead, then his chest, promising that their bond will endure, he is forced to accept a truth he has always avoided. Some partings cannot be reversed, and his task is not to cling at all costs, but to keep what this encounter has planted in him. Instead of exploding in anger, instead of shouting accusations, he chooses to hold his friend and let his tears speak. This silence is nothing like the silence behind a slammed bedroom door. It is not the silence of running away. It is the silence of acceptance. As the ship rises into the sky, leaving a glowing trail, he doesn't bolt back into the house or try to hide what happened from his mother like before. He stays beside his family and lets his mother hold him while his siblings stand close. The old pattern that is echoed through his life, lying, rebelling, shutting down, is replaced by a new choice. Sharing meeting E.T. doesn't magically heal the fracture in his family or bring his father home, But it teaches him that he isn't forever defined by the feeling of being left behind. Through this journey, a boy who once knew only small, bitter bursts of anger learns to turn that energy into courage, to reshape his instinct to hide into a will to protect, and to transform his fear of losing people into a deeper appreciation of those who remain inside him. The image of his small friend pointing a glowing finger at his chest and saying, "Right here," will always remind him that real affection doesn't vanish with a departing ship or a disappearing parent. It can be carried, nurtured, and used to grow from a wounded child into someone who knows how to love and how to let others go free.